Yeah, but before I give the mic to him, I would just like to say that there is still a lot of story left in this documentary. Just because the prices have come down from 15,000 to $350 per year, the drugs are still not available to the poor countries because these countries still have their patent laws and they can't violate them because the US would impose trade sanctions on them. So there is still a lot of story left. And now I'll once again introduce our guest. He's a very accomplished lawyer. He has been in senior leadership teams of Cipla, Glenmark, and he has had other achievements as well. Uh, so the floor is now open for questions.
Like ours, we have ethics committee, and my friends are doing MBBS, and they also have ethics committees. So doesn't Pfizer or these private companies, uh, they are bound to answer some ethics committee?
Okay. So the ethics committee is for trials. So the way drug discovery happens is there's a lot of lab work, then it goes to animals, just like you have a little animal facility here on campus. And there is a way that it goes, small animals. So you'll do mice and rodents, then you'll do rabbits, guinea pigs, rabbits, dogs, monkeys, and that's all in this facility here. Once we are very, very happy with that result, we then take it into humans. Between the time you get done with monkeys or other animals and the time you start with humans is where the ethics review happens. Okay, so the trial will have to happen on humans. So let's assume that, and this is not a place where it's likely to happen. Okay, so it's going to happen in a medical facility. So it could be a dispensary, it could be a hospital, but some site depending on what kind of treatment you're trying to do. So simple example, it's a new drug for blood pressure. Okay? You don't need a super specialty hospital to trial that drug because we see that it's another one similar to what we already have. Let's just start with this proposition. So we don't think anything dramatic is going to happen. It's slightly better than what we have. So we do, before we do all of this, we will go to an ethics committee of many of these sites. So each hospital has an ethics committee, and we will present to the ethics committee what it is that we plan to do. Okay, so we will, how do we screen patients? Do we take patients with really high blood pressure or patients with moderate and low levels of issues with blood pressure? What will be the age? Do we take people in their 20s with blood pressure or do we take people in their 50s with blood pressure? How many in each arm? So there is a trial protocol that's written up. Then statisticians will tell us that you can't do a trial on 5 people. So for the size of this to be giving us a result that is informative, you will need to do at least, let's say, 100 in the first stage. So all of this is written up as a trial protocol. What we know, what we plan to do, everything that can go wrong, how we plan to deal with it if things go wrong. This is all written up in a clinical trial protocol. We give it to the, and we have investigators in each, which is the doctor who will actually administer and monitor the patient who's got this. All that happens through a phase. So your phase 1, which is we just look at safety in phase 1. How do people react to this? What is the effect of it at low doses? The second stage we see, does it actually do anything? We also figure out dose. And let's say we give you 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. would give 1 milligram per kilogram body weight. So what is the dose at which it is effective? What is the maximum tolerated dose? So we do kind of a dose titration at that time. And it's not easy to do, which is why it is a trial. It's an experiment. Once we get through that, if it is safe, if it actually works, then we do phase 3, which is the big trial. And this could be tens of thousands of people. And we've got to figure out different kinds of people, age, other problems, all put together. So again, it's a huge statistical analysis to figure out how do we recruit these people. At the end of that, if it meets what we define as the endpoints for it, then we apply for approval of the drug. So all of this is the phase where you have the ethical committees looking at it and saying, was this trial done ethically? Then the drug gets approved. And then there is a phase 4, which is after it is approved, we do a monitoring of that for a period of a couple of years. So the ethics committee is in this part of it. But once it's approved for sale, then you can sell it at whatever price you like. There are no ethics involved. So, but if you're interested in the disaster of ethical trials, of clinical trials in India, please read Dinesh Thakur's book, The Truth Pill. There is a whole chapter on it, on the history of Indian clinical trials and drug approvals. And generally, it's not a nice story. So, the 2 books after this documentary came out is Bottle of Lies by Catherine Eben and Dinesh Thakur's book, The Truth Pill. So all those of you who are interested in understanding the access to health space, please also read these 2 books. It gives you the other side of what the problem is, the real problem.
Kind of making it available to public. There is a strong conflict in as we can see in this particular situation.
Yes.
The fact that patent laws are a kind of a cover-up for all these kind of issues. I would not say probably the direct cover-up, but maybe a very important kind of element. How does, let's say, a person who is trying to innovate something should take a path towards this kind of direction? And second point is that what in a free market capitalistic viewpoint, why can't there be a kind of a cap? Or is that wrong way of looking at the free markets themselves? It would be nice to
So the big question that this raises is, what is the incentive to innovate? Okay, and the answer to the question is, patents give you the monopoly. So if you innovate, rather than giving you money, they allow you to scope the market and make the money. Now, the original idea of a patent is very important. Why is there a patent? In the old days, so we're talking 150 years ago, there was no incentive to dispense knowledge, to propagate knowledge. So what you had was a lot of people with secrets. And that was a problem, because it was small scale. So somebody had invented something and would dispense it out as a secret, as magical cure. If you take the same example here, okay, it could be patent of anything, but it would be that it can't be scaled up because only one person knew it. And then it would be in the family, or it would be amongst a small group. In that case, a group of similar skilled people, which used to be a guild. You're all too young to remember this, but there is a history of artisanal guilds in medieval India as well, but also in Europe, where people who had a similar craft, blacksmiths, locksmiths, people with similar skills formed secret societies, and they were called guilds. It existed in India as well. My father had a certificate from a guild. That was the vocational training you got at that time, before you had the ITIs and everything else. Till about 1960 something, we still had guilds and masters of guilds and all of that, and they would give you a certificate. So if you had any vocational training, there would be guilds, but this history goes back a long way. So there was an understanding that these guilds became very secretive, very incestuous. So the knowledge didn't actually propagate outside. And there was a monopoly of knowledge amongst individuals in small groups, which deterred innovation, which deterred progress. Because you didn't know how to do it, you couldn't innovate, you couldn't use it elsewhere. So it became very secretive. Patent was really an incentive to disclose. That's why when you file for a patent, what you file is called a disclosure. What you are applying for is a monopoly, and what you are paying to get that monopoly is the disclosure, which means I have this secret, I am willing to give it for free, so everybody else benefits from it. So I put it out in the commons, but for 20 years after the date I put it out in the commons, I'm the only one who gets to make it. But knowledge progresses as a result of that. You may not be able to produce that item, but the knowledge of whatever is put out in the public space then becomes available to everybody else. Now you think of what is the origin of the patent, where it began, okay, and see where it has got to. The original idea was not this, what you saw in the movie. The original idea was disclosure. But we've gone to a stage where what we are disclosing is so marginally better than what exactly was there previously, which you saw from the AZT example, that you kept gaming the system, saying I'm disclosing something now, then I'll wait till the 19th year and then disclose something else then, and then get another 20-year patent on it, and then wait for 19 years and then disclose something else on that, and it keeps gaming the system. So if you take our hypertension, blood pressure example, I'll tell you this is a very good drug. In the 19th year, I'll say, actually, it has all these side effects. You'll have kidney failure, you'll have liver failure, you'll die of heart attack. Therefore, don't take it without this one other thing. So then the combination becomes another patent. And it runs on for a while, and then you say, actually, this is very good, but you could also have Alzheimer's at the end of it. Therefore, you take this other drug. And then you say you could get Alzheimer's, but which can treat with something else. But the side effects of the Alzheimer's thing is you have nausea, you have incontinence, all of these things. So you need to take this other drug with the Alzheimer's drug to treat the blood pressure. So this goes on forever, which means that the monopoly continues because you're not actually disclosing the whole story. The other way you play with it is what we see with inhalers. All of you, any of you asthmatic here use inhalers? Lucky people, well done. Is to say that this is a drug that will solve your problem, but it needs to be used in this device, and the device is patented. So you have a drug patent that lasts whatever time, then you have a device patent that lasts whatever time, and towards the end of that device patent or the drug patent, you change something in it. So you will say the device has this beautiful nozzle, and this is the spray pattern of the nozzle. All of you are scientists, you will understand what is the size of that spray and what is the shape of it, what is the pattern of it, what does that mist look like, and they'll keep changing that nozzle slightly, which means that you can never actually get into that market. Another way of doing it is the canister itself is patented. And there are only 2 companies in the world that produce these canisters. So basically, if I buy up the capacity of those 2 companies, then frankly, even if you crack the patent, you can't get anyone to supply you the canisters. So there are lots of these tricks that are used, especially in this business, where the market is monopolized, and that is the rich part of the market. And the poor part of the market is just ignored. So we don't really care about Africa, India, several of these countries, because actually we can make money at $15,000. Why bother making it, selling it, dealing with the Indian government, all of that? At now, the drugs that you're looking at are 5 cents. So from $1, we are down to 5 cents. The exact same thing. So that is what the patent battle from innovation to patent has caused. The bigger question though is, will you still have, so places like this, what is the incentive to innovate? Now, we've looked at examples after this. Okay? So, the two examples that we have looked at after this, that's more likely to, I think, relate to us is hepatitis C is a large problem in most LMIC countries, and hepatitis C until 2013 had no cure, which means you need a liver transplant. So, the first drug that was invented to deal with hepatitis C, what do you think it was priced at? Guess? Any guess? Any guess? Come on.
At the price of a liver transplant.
You're absolutely right. So, good. So, you're getting the sense of how pricing is done. You look at what a liver transplant will cost, and then you're the good guy, right? So, you give a 10% discount to that. But how many liver transplants can you do in a country? Whereas, how many can I produce? How many of these drugs can I produce? So, suddenly the market for my drug is like 1000 times the liver transplant market. You see how the game's played out, right? That there are only that many liver transplants you can do for a variety of reasons. I mean, just a constraint on how many liver transplants you can do in a country. But there's no constraint on how many pills you can eat. So, in that example, they priced the pill at $1,000 for one pill. Okay? And you had to take 84 of those pills. So, the price of that treatment was $84,000. And they said that it was a great deal because the cost of a liver transplant was about 6 times that. Now, how many of you think it's a great deal? So, that was the challenge in 2012 that we had this one drug, sofosbuvir. It was the only known way to cure hepatitis C, and it cost $1,000 a pill. Now, you might ask, they spent so much money on creating this drug, and it's a miraculous drug. You should be allowed to charge a market price, which is, as he said, comparable to a liver transplant and significantly cheaper than a liver transplant. Okay? So, that's what you would think of as market. They can charge, and there's somebody to pay for it, and somebody is willing to make it, therefore, it's a good deal. It's true. It would have been a good deal if we actually had a free market, which means that people had a choice of buying this or something else, then there's a free market. It would have been a free market if there's more than one person selling it and price could be discovered, and there's more than one person buying it. Then it's a free market. It would be a free market if you could actually negotiate. Say a willing buyer and a willing seller. Then you could negotiate, then there's a free market. When there is a monopoly, there is no free market. And even economists will agree that when there is a monopoly, there is no free market. I mean, Ashish is here and he can stand up and say no if he doesn't think so. And therefore, the free market economics fails when you have one fat monopolist. So, even the great free market theorists will say that there is very little space in a free market for a monopoly. They will find some virtues in monopolies, but largely the consensus is that it has to be a real great exception. And I will address it because we should. There are some natural monopolies. For example, water supply to your campus is a natural monopoly. You can't have a free market for water, which means you can't say anybody from Karnataka can also supply water to this campus. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. Whereas for other things, you could actually have a free market. But there is a natural monopoly of water. I mean, the natural monopoly of sunshine. Suddenly you are in a place where free market economics does not make any sense, and therefore you say where there are monopolies, the general rules of market pricing do not apply. What is the defense? So, people who wrote the patent law should have thought of this. I mean, they're not stupid. And they must have read Adam Smith, which they did actually. And so they thought of this situation that we are creating a monopoly. What if the monopolist abuses the monopoly? Which means prices in such a way that it keeps out most of the people in the market. And they found many things around it, which is what you saw in the example with Thailand. So what did Thailand do? Thailand said, we have a monopoly which is outside Thailand. They have a patent in Thailand and they can sell at any price they like. But Thailand has healthcare which is funded by government. So it's not completely free, but it's accessible to everybody in, and it's very, very well priced. So they said they will manufacture it in breach of the patent in a way. So the government will manufacture it to be supplied free or at a very nominal cost to its people. This is the first exception that has always been there in patent law, which is that if the product is for government use, then the patent falls. Sorry? Any patent. So patent is domestic, right? So a patent is filed in India. The Indian government can decide for any patent that it is for government use, for the space program, for the army, for health, for education. The government can decide that it is for government use. Then the patent monopoly goes. So what the government can do is ask somebody else to make it for government, not for that company to make a profit, but for government. So that is a well-known exception to all monopolies. So one of the things that Dr. Hamid said was patent law is national law. So every country has a slightly different patent law. When the WTO was established, one of the big ideas they had was to free trade barriers, right? So they said we must have freer trade amongst countries. And they tried to align, as they called it, IPR. And said we must have, because IPR causes a trade barrier, let's align all our principles on intellectual property. So therefore, in 95, when India became a member of the WTO, it undertook to amend its patent law. Okay, so between 1995 and 2005, we were given a transition period. All LMIC companies, LDC countries were given a transition period, and we took that 10-year transition period, 1995-2005, at which time we took away certain benefits that the old 1970 Patent Act had. One of those benefits or protections we had was you could not have a product patent for medicines. So the product itself wasn't patented, only the way you produced it could be patented. You see the big difference? So you have two kinds of patents, you have a product patent and the process patent. So they said if you invent a drug, the product itself you can't patent, it's only the recipe, how to make it is what you could patent. That was the old 1970 legislation. And that's how we brought down the prices of drugs. Because we said if you do it in a particular way, and you're all scientists, right? You can find ways around it to do it slightly differently. And each of them is a different process. That's how we got prices down from 1970 to 2005. That was a way out. That exception went. So from 2005, under the new Patents Act, you have product patents even for medicines. And that's the big change that we got by aligning to the WTO's concept. Now, what was the trade? You have to understand, right? We gave something. What were we promised? We were promised a lot of technology. What the West told us in the negotiations, what was the bargain? What the West told us was, we can't give you technology because of this problem that you have with your patent law. So if you reform your patent law, we will bring more technology into the rest of the developing world. The truth is they never kept their side of the bargain. So, and this story continues to this day because we saw it during COVID. We didn't get the tech for the vaccines. We didn't get the tech for diagnostics. We didn't get the tech for anything. So despite the law at the WTO, despite the Doha Declaration, despite the Patent Act that we have, we didn't get anything. Africa didn't get vaccines. South America didn't get vaccines. What did they get? They got nothing. So yes, we have somewhat of a harmonized system, but each country is free to do its own thing. And many countries have done their own thing. So you saw Thailand is a good example of that. They did it not just for this, but for several other drugs as well. Other countries around the world have done it as well. In fact, during the pandemic, the United States did it. It pretty much marched in, took over patents and gave it to the vaccine companies and said, forget about everybody else's patents, just go and make the vaccine. We'll fight the patent battles later. So now we are likely to see some patent battles. Some have started on the vaccine because some of that tech, everybody is claiming bits of that tech. Whereas during the pandemic, the United States government said, let's not worry about this, we'll fight this later, let's get the vaccines done. So there is this big challenge. But to answer the second part of your question, what do institutions do? A good model is what the institutions in the United States do. If you see a lot of these drugs, they were all based on patents in universities. So a lot of the patents are owned by the universities and then licensed to these companies. And fortunes have been made on these patents by universities. So, billions are made by universities thanks to these patents. And that's what creates the buildings and the infrastructure and, grants and scholarships for students and everything that you see of that is great and wonderful on US campuses. A lot of it's attributed to these patents. The downside of it is that since they are expecting to get a lot of money from it, they have no sense of humanity sometimes. So we have a fight currently on in Delhi at the moment for a drug that extends life for a little period of time, where the patent holder is a university in California. And it's ridiculous because that drug is so expensive that it's never going to be sold in India. So we have the same problem, right? So you have to think of it slightly differently. If anyway you're not selling it here because it's unaffordable, why do you care if someone else sold it for nothing? That is the big question to ask. And that's the question this movie seeks to ask. And we're facing that problem in India with that drug, but also with TB. So more people die in India of TB than most other ailments. And we don't have treatment for some kinds of tuberculosis in India because the drug is patented, not available in India. And the government has a TB eradication program, so only the government can go and procure these drugs and actually give them out. And government's doing really badly with this. And the book to read on that is a wonderful book called The Phantom Plague. Please read it. Also carry a box of tissues when you're reading the book. I mean, it's one of those books. It's just fantastic to read, but heart-wrenching. So we have this model in the United States of research, but it's broken because they're going for profits rather than what they should be doing. One of the other things, if you didn't notice, was the amount of government money spent on research. Most of the research comes out of the NIH and of the US government. So again, they're not very good at how they license out. So they're again going for profit rather than for public interest. So it's again, book recommendation for you is Maria Mazzucato's Entrepreneurial State, which looks at all technologies around the world. So whether it's your internet or it's iPads, most of the research funding came from the United States government. So there are a few messages here that I hope you will watch it again and take away. But there are a lot of these messages here about who actually funds innovation, where it is, which is, as you said, it's in educational institutions, research institutions. Who makes the money on it? The big pharmaceutical companies. Who pays for it? Mostly the rich. Who actually needs it? Nobody's asking. So one of the things that we are asking after this is for educational institutions and research institutions to think again about their licensing terms. Unfortunately, the US government is not open about how it is licensed it. So one of the people here is James Love. I hope you've noticed. He won a MacArthur grant. So clearly, and those of you who don't know, MacArthur grant is just a sum of money given without any strings attached. And they're called MacArthur geniuses. So it's given to a few people who are exceptional, young exceptional people, and just an amount of money with no strings attached. Do what you want with it. So he was one of them. And the one who won it last year was Preeti Krishtel, who also does a lot of work on access to medicines. So again, you know, supposedly they're called MacArthur geniuses for that reason. He continues to fight to this day to get actual information from the US government on the terms of licenses to Big Pharma. And the US government finds many excuses not to reveal that information to him, despite his freedom of information requests many times over. And he continues to fight battles for access. We saw it during COVID as well. So there are activists out there who are still trying to get information so that we can understand how this transaction was done, who benefits from it, where the licenses are. So many of these people are still fighting battles. The oldies are dead, but you know, Zach, for example, Zaki Ahmed, and a South African judge were both gay rights activists. Some of the others as well. So it's not activist for a cause. I mean, they continue to be activists on access to medicines. It was HIV, then it became tuberculosis, it's vaccines. So there is this battle which is continuously still being fought, and the same players are still around. So we saw Roche there. They're still there in trastuzumab, which is the breast cancer drug, is the same guys. So in many ways, the actors are still the same. The difference is the big pharma guys are still the same. The ones who are competing with them are lots of Indian companies. So remember that when you read the press reports on quality and other things, just think again as to whether you can take it on face value and how much masala is there to it. You'll have to calibrate it a little bit to find out what the truth of it is. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but
is government playing some role in getting knowledge that these people have knowledge, like that they do not want to share the knowledge with other people, like poor people? So what is the why they are doing such kind of things? Is money is important thing behind it or something else? And another thing is there is unsymmetrical distribution of resources among the people all over the world. So why not, like in India, there is a Supreme Court, so they are making some rules, and if the rules are applying to those people.
So 4 different questions. I'll try to answer them separately. So the first one is, what is the government doing to disseminate information? You shouldn't expect government to do that because they're really bad at doing it. If you take the example of all the research done in India with government grant, there's a lot of research done with government grant. Very little of it is seen in product, right? So government is not really a good place to create information, disseminate information, and create products. That we know. Because for at least in my lifetime, 50 something years, we haven't seen a good product come out of government or from government research. Even during COVID, you'll remember everybody said IIT is going to make this, IIT is going to make that. Have you seen any product from there? IIT Madras for 40 years now has had an innovation lab. Hasn't produced one product. So you can't expect in the current model that government will fund and find a product and bring it to market. That does not happen in India. So you can't expect government to go and find the information. So whatever is created here in this institution, you can't expect government to do anything about it. At best, you can expect government to give you money. Then it's up to you whether you want to publish it or patent it. Yeah. So you've done research, you publish it, everybody reads it, or you patent it, everybody reads it. There are two ways it will come out. If you keep it a secret, there is no incentive. How do I think about it? You'll only keep something a secret if there's an incentive to keep it a secret. Yeah. So, for example, the formula for Coca-Cola is a secret. The incentive is that nobody can figure it out. That is the incentive. But it's a big risk, right? Because seriously, if you take Coca-Cola, buy a bottle of Coca-Cola, and you spend, I think, one summer vacation, anybody who has a chemistry degree can figure out what it is. You're all science students, I'm assuming that it can't be that difficult, right? It should be possible to do it. That is the disincentive, that if you do not patent it, some college kid will take it one summer in his garage or in the lab, or make it his summer project and say this is how Coca-Cola is made. So we've created an incentive structure to disclose, and the disincentive is that if you keep it a secret and somebody cracks it, bad luck. So that's how the model works for an incentive to disclose. So I've dealt with your first question, which is government is not a great place to do it. Second question is, how do you disseminate? The third one is, how do you incentivize people to actually innovate? That's really your challenge, right? When there is a difference in resources between India and the rest of the world. Now, what this told you is that R&D is not really that expensive. It's a myth when people think that it takes billions to do R&D. Now, where is the billions spent? When you say it costs a lot of money to bring a drug to market, the initial part of the chemistry is not difficult because it's done in the lab. And now you have computer models to be able to do most of your chemistry. It's not like the old days where you sat and spent days, months, years researching the journals and researching it and drawing on the board and all of that stuff. All that is gone. An example of that is the vaccine. Yeah. As soon as we had in the National Institute of Virology the sequencing, within 24 hours we had a vaccine. We had the formula for a vaccine. We knew what the vaccine was going to be. We had to make it, but we knew what it was going to be. It was that quick. And there's no secret to it. What the vaccine should be could easily be invented in that sense. So again, the fact that we are resource crunched and somebody else has a lot of resource, thankfully that has been bridged substantially because of what tech is available to us. So even places like this in India can quite easily come up with much of the answers. Now, it's a different question, why are you not doing it? That's a different problem altogether. But we have the capability to actually do this. And it doesn't take much. It's not a super expensive lab which is going to cost $1 billion. Who are these people actually inventing these drugs? If you go around and see all the new drugs in the last 20 years, it's not Johnson, Johnson, Pfizer, GSK. None of these guys has found a new drug. The new drugs in the United States are found in startups. So, if you go back and think that $1,000 a pill wasn't invented by Gilead, which actually sold it. They bought a startup that had already invented the drug. So, every one of you who thinks it costs a lot of money to invent a drug, please go and check all the new drugs in the last 20 years. Not one of them has come from a $1 billion corporation. They're all startups that are being funded, well funded, and are inventing new drugs, including the vaccines. Okay. So, this is not some weird story I'm telling you. You go back and see the Moderna vaccine and you see the Pfizer vaccine. Those two companies, where did the IP come from? Where did the patents come from? And where did the drug come from? When the vaccine itself come from? Moderna didn't even have a manufacturing plant. It was just a lab. And they used patents of many other people. So, if you want to do great stuff, you can actually find patents, you can actually find knowledge around you, and you can do it here. So, it's a myth that there is a big resource divide between us and them. The last question is, do we need a global Supreme Court? We don't. We have enough rules in the world. We don't need somebody else to tell us what the rules are. So, there are no rules on what you can read. So, if you find knowledge somewhere else, you can read it yourself. There are no rules to prevent you from making them in India. If it's such a breakthrough thing, we will find a way for your product to come to market. There's not going to be a problem with that. So, these are all things that I think in a lot of these institutions, we have barriers on ourselves to think, oh my God, there must be some problem. Otherwise, somebody else would have thought of it. It doesn't matter. So, my advice to everybody in these research institutions is please publish. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing. Even if you don't make the thing, at least publish. It's a great idea. Somebody will make it. And if you think it's a good idea, patent it. It doesn't cost very much to patent. Please patent it. Either publish or patent. One of the two things you have to do. And there are lots of people to help you with it, both with publication as with patenting. There are lots of people who are happy to help you, and a lot of that is available pro bono. The government will allow you to file the patent for virtually no money. So, the patent fee is very, very limited, very small amount of fees to be paid for patents. If you are an educational institution or a research institution, then patent costs are nothing. We're talking thousands here, okay? So, if you just stop having pizza for 1 year, you can afford a patent. So, again, there's just not enough awareness here on what you can do. So, please, the answer to your 4 questions, the last one is publish or patent. We don't do enough, including in this place, on both. Waiting, I think with all academics, my friend Ashish included, waiting for perfect before you can publish. I think production before perfection, I think, is a good thing. And some of you who actually work with equipment on the lab know that go for production. We'll get to perfection later. So, with both of these things, your problem will be solved if you patent or publish. We're somehow very reluctant to do it. The Western world is a lot more, I think, brave about their opinions. We somehow seem to be very reluctant to publish or patent. The flip side of it is, in many of these institutions are funded by the government, there is an incentive structure to patent. So, we have thousands of crap patents. So, there is a downside to this as well. Once you say that publish or patent, we have lots of places that publish crap and a great number of places that also patent crap. So, there is a problem with that, I agree. But I'd rather have more patents than fewer patents. Because the more you have, there's a hope that 1 or 2 of them might actually become products. But if you don't patent at all, then there's very little hope at all. So there needs to be a change in culture in educational institutions, in research institutions to say, let's publish, let's patent, understanding that there's going to be lots of crap being published and lots of crap being patented. If you're really interested, read the annual reports of any of the large companies. They will list patents. Then you think, all of these guys are software companies. I can't remember one product they created. So what are the patents actually doing? You have to ask, no? Those are the paper patents. So there is a downside to this incentive structure. You find also in a lot of government-funded research institutions, because to get promotion as a scientist, whatever, you need to file patents. But you have to ask yourself, if that's such a great product, why is it that nobody's seen it? And for 40 years in that institution, they filed thousands of patents and not created one product. So what is that patent really worth? There is a downside to it. And that's unfortunately where we've gone. We're not publishing good papers and publishing good patents. We've gone down the worst way, jugaad. We publish bad papers and we fight for bad patents. 4 questions answered. You know, we were having this conversation at lunchtime. You know, it's like saying 1 in every 4 people is Chinese. There are 20 people in this room. 5 Chinese, please stand up. There's a real problem with that. So the fact that the strike rate for you know, startups is 4%, it's actually a meaningless number, because we don't know if you are in the 4% or in the 96%. So there's a danger with looking at statistics to answer this question, is what will be the strike rate? It's impossible to find a percentage. If you're really interested, there is a wonderful report by a team at Bloom Ventures, B-L-U-M-E, Bloom Ventures. I mean, they produce some outstanding reports, especially funding startups. So I helped them set up their first fund 15 years ago. And there's a report that's just been released called the Omega Files. And it's a great report on startups. And they've had great success stories. But also they've created a great ecosystem for startups, of founders, of funders. They've had great successes, but some of them had shut down fairly quickly as well. So I don't know the answer to what is the percentage of successful startups. But what I do know is there is great opportunity to get funded if you're a startup, even in India. There have been great ideas that have been greatly successful. So, and places like the Atal Lab here, and lots of VC funding now for startups. Especially if you have a patent, life is very easy. So, it's something that almost is a rule of thumb, that if you have a patent and its likelihood of a decent product emanating from that patent, then the development time on that is reasonably well funded. And it doesn't matter in which sector. And in some ways, we've got a product that created a market. You know, home delivery apps. You know, who would have thought Uber or Ola? So you create a product and then the market kind of is created by that app or that product that you are creating.
During COVID time, vaccines were manufactured in India and also supplied to the other countries also.
Very little, huh?
Yeah. So during that time, like, how did we came across this? How did we dealt with the patent laws?
Very good question. So the only vaccine that I will talk about is the Covishield vaccine. So the Covishield vaccine was created in Oxford University, licensed to AstraZeneca, and then they did the production part of it. So AstraZeneca had some patents and licenses as far as the production went. The tech transfer happened in a month to Serum Institute. So it says something, right? That the tech is not very complicated and we know how to absorb it. So we are quite technically advanced when it comes to that. and we can produce it very cheaply. And we know we can produce it very cheaply because for the rest of the world, we sell more vaccines in the rest of the world than any other country. So if you go to the WHO website, there's a PAHO website which lists all the vaccines that the WHO procures. We're the cheapest and we supply most of the vaccines to the rest of the world. Okay? So the licensing from AstraZeneca to Serum Institute allowed Serum to sell in India. Now, if AstraZeneca didn't have a patent in those parts, in some parts of the world, then Serum could sell into those markets. Okay? That's your first thing. And the second thing is, as when it came to vaccines, it was governments that were procuring the vaccines. And therefore, you had a government non-commercial use exception to the patent anyway. The reality was we sold very little of it because most of it was consumed in India. So we just about managed to provide domestic supplies. And even when we did sell a little bit to Nepal and a little bit to Bhutan and a little bit to somebody else, it was very little. And in some of those cases, people couldn't get their second dose. So actually, it was a really silly situation where they got one dose and we didn't give them enough for a second dose. So we didn't actually do ourselves much good with that. So the problem with IPR in vaccines was that we could have produced more for the rest of the world, but the licenses didn't allow us to do it, and we just managed it very badly. We had capacity to actually service lots of Africa and lots of Latin America. In fact, I wrote a piece in September 2020, just when COVID had started. I'd written a piece to say that India will actually save the world because we can make vaccines for the world. And I set out a plan for how it can be done. We decided to ignore everything that I said and when it came to vaccines. But we could have done spectacularly well. We have the facilities, and if we had done the same thing that Moderna did, which is distributed manufacture. So you take a manufacturing process, break it down, and then have many people do many parts of it. Then we didn't have to build a facility to manufacture a vaccine. So we know we had bioreactors in many parts of India. So we could have done the culture there. We know we have lots of fermentation tanks everywhere. So you could have done the second process there. We know we have lots of places where we can do filtration, and the third one there. So we know we have lots of filling capacity. Sterile vial filling capacity, we have plenty. So if we had thought of it in that way and distributed the manufacture across India, we could have had vaccines. Before the second wave, we could have vaccinated the whole country. We have that much capacity. So it's how we think about it. IPR was not the issue. If IPR was the issue, we would have just cracked it. Somebody would have stood up in that room. You know, let's say I'm the Prime Minister and I said, so we have to get 2 billion vaccines in the next 3 months. Okay? Get everybody in the room and say, okay, everybody sits here, nobody leaves till we have a plan. There is a whiteboard, there is chalk, let's make a plan. Tell me all the problems. So you'll have problems, right? Raw materials will be some problem. Somebody will say, okay, we don't have raw materials. Okay, who can make the raw materials? Somebody in India can make it. They're not making it because of a patent. They're not making it for a reason. But we know we can make it. Go and get them to make it. Oh, we need bioreactor bags. What are they? Plastic bags. We can make it. No, we need something else. What are they? Balloons. We can make it. No. If we just put it down, what we need to manufacture vaccines, and we get a good sense of what everybody had, use for something else. Use for something else. But the facilities were available. So somebody said, we didn't have vial facilities to fill. We actually have plenty of sterile facilities we have. We just had to repurpose it to fill this. You can fill anything in it. You can fill Coca-Cola in those vials. There's no problem with that. It's not what you're filling in it. It's the facility itself that fills vials. So you can fill anything in it. You can fill orange juice in it. There's no problem. So if we had taken that approach to it, patents wouldn't have come in the way, and all of these constraints wouldn't have been there. There would be no actual manufacturing constraints. But we didn't take that approach. We decided we will build one facility to manufacture vaccines in one place. That meant lots of people died. So that's not really the challenge. And we could have actually exported a lot more. It wasn't difficult technology. As I said, it only took a month. From the time they had finished trials and announced that they could actually sell, to the time we manufactured a batch was only a month. And that's nothing in the life cycle of a vaccine, of any product, is to be able to get from a product which is approved to a manufacturing site which has not been approved, to get the transfer done in a month, which is absolutely fantastic. So, a bit of a tragedy, but it tells you that we can do it. So again, resource crunch, not a problem. Ashish sir.
So, Michael Kremer has combined 3 of his questions when he speaks about using awards or prizes instead of patents. So, what if the government says, in the case of, say, for example, hepatitis C, that, hey, we'll announce 1 million, 10 million, $20 million for whichever company comes up with a successful drug, give that money to the company, but then says that, hey, this patent is now available for everybody.
Correct.
What are the pros and cons of this approach? One. And second, in the case of, I'm dying to ask as an economist ever since he asked the question, how do you define success for a startup? Is it a good idea? Is it profit? Is it an unintended good idea, like the Viagra example? So both of these questions.
So the question of price has always been an alternative. The problem has been we've not been able to size the price. So there are lots of problems in the world. We haven't been able to find a price enough for each problem. So that's our first big challenge, is that for the liver transplant problem, we haven't been able to say, here is 10 million and that is incentive enough for someone to research. We haven't been able to figure that out. So we haven't been able to size what is the adequate incentive to solve that problem. It's like, you know, those crazy mathematical theorems, right? $1 million if you can solve this great mathematical theorem or statistical problem and all that. You still have those prizes many, many years after it was instituted. So that's your problem. There it's purely theoretical. Here we just don't know what will be the attraction. And therefore we've gone for the ability to break your monopoly and said, you be reasonable and we'll allow you to continue to have a monopoly. When it crosses into being unreasonable, we will break the monopoly. So that's the view we've taken because we can't size the problem. Sorry. So for any of them, I think there's going to be a big challenge. If you look at the tech industry, so before my life in life sciences, I used to do a lot of tech work, and there are lots of parallels. I did an interview in 2013 November to say the future of healthcare is similar to the future of tech at the time, which is that inventions and new ideas will come from startups. I said it 11 years ago, so, and it's on record. So I'm not trying to rationalize what is happening now. I predicted it 11 years ago to say that this is how technology has developed, which is startups actually create new stuff. The big tech companies actually have stopped creating anything new for many years now. When was the last time you got some new idea from a big tech company? Hasn't happened. They all go and acquire. Now, if you define being acquired by a big company as success, that's one way of doing it. Second way of doing it is, we've noticed with the large companies, they acquire competition to kill it. So then you have to think, if I get acquired and my baby is killed, is that success or not? In healthcare, that doesn't count as success. Okay, and we've seen this happen a lot in every sector, that you look at a product or a company that is threatening, you acquire it, either you incorporate those features into your product or make it your product. Okay, so you take that and call it your product and sell it, or you suppress it for a while until the life cycle of your product reaches the dead end. Then you resurrect this product and put it in the front of that and call it a new product. So it extends the life cycle of your dead product, which should have been dead 10 years ago. But because of your position as a monopoly, you've been able to push that product for 10 more years. Now that's completely dead, really, really dead. Then you resurrect an old product and stick it on the top of that and say it's a new product. And then your company gets life again, few more. First time you killed it because it was competition. Second time, you put it in deep freeze and brought it out later on in life. Again, is that success? In healthcare, all of this costs lives. Whether you kill the product or you suppress it for a while, lives could have been saved. So, if you're looking at healthcare, it's a very difficult question to answer. My very simplistic way of looking at it is, does it extend life? Does it make life more bearable? It's a very simplistic way of doing it, in which case it is successful. Now, whether people will actually buy it, are they too stupid to understand what the value of it is? That I don't know. It has happened, right? Some great things, people are stupid, they don't buy it, product fails. So, is that success or not? I don't know. I mean, I would think that's successful for me. But success is 100 crores, success is 1000 crores, I don't know. Success is, you know, being on the front page of, I don't know, your alumni magazine, may be enough. But some people may say, no, I want to be on the front page of Time magazine or cover page of Fortune or whatever it is. So, I don't know what success is here. I think I have a successful life. I have not been on the cover page of any magazine. I am not ambitious.
How should one look at, let's say, moral philosophy on knowledge creation, dissemination, utility? This probably also has to be in the realm of looking at how at all we are thinking. Because if everything is defined by purely from a utilitarian aspect, which is already an issue. Second aspect is if you go ahead and you make it utilitarian, and you end up with these complications, which is purely a construct of human society. Correct. Right? Because as very nicely kind of expressed in the movie, there too, this problem is very well highlighted. Now, because merely just looking at the problem from an economics point of view is very important, because that's where the answers will come, hopefully. But the actual questions probably also are in the initial process of creation of knowledge. Correct. How should one grapple with this, or rather, it's a very tough thing. I can readily kind of acknowledge that, but I'm very interested to know your viewpoint on how should we really go about looking at that problem.
So this is a very interesting question, and again, I have a recommendation here, which is please watch videos by Michael Sandel. Michael Sandel teaches at Harvard, and he fills stadiums for his lecture. He's that popular. And the title of but the book which answers your question is called What Money Can't Buy. Okay, and this is the question he seeks to answer, that there are things in society that money shouldn't be allowed to buy. Because everything in society is not valued in money terms. So, I think the challenge we face is when we reduce everything and we use economics only for money. Economics has other uses. I think we tend to use it only for money, and we try to reduce everything using economics to money. We can use economics for choice, but we don't use economics for choice. We try to use economics as a tool to reduce everything to money, when actually that is not the sole purpose of economics. I mean, I have never trained as an economist, but I use economics not to reduce things to money, but actually to make choices. So we can choose not to reduce everything to money and make money the incentive for everything. And Sandel uses this very powerfully to say that as a society, we've tried to reduce incentives to money, outcomes to money, performance criteria to money, everything to money. You want something, we look at what is the cost of it. That's not the whole answer. So if we can get out, as we think, from reducing everything to money or buying with money, then you can answer the question and say, actually, there is more value to this than the cost of it or the price of it. So if you change that question to saying, what is the value of something is neither its cost nor its price, then we've answered the question. So what is the success of a product that improves life is neither the price of it nor the cost of it, is the outcome that it delivers, then it is a successful product. So this is a slightly different way of how we look at it, and this is what he says is a very recent concept. So and the reason I say that is my introduction to economics, very unstructured, was Adam Smith. We tend to read Adam Smith very badly. There are 2 books by Adam Smith, and my suggestion is, how many of you can name both books? Exactly. Everybody remembers Wealth of Nations. What is the other book? No, nothing to do with market. There is no market in it. No. Bolu. Theory of moral sentiments. So my recommendation is, when you said, what is the market analysis of this, please read both books. Please read both books. And his sense of the market is widely misunderstood and misquoted. He never said that there must be chaos, and out of this chaos will come some beautiful creature that is well regulated. He never said that. So a lot of what is touted, even by serious economists, as Adam Smith is a misreading of Adam Smith. So sadly, I read Adam Smith in the original version before I read anything else on the commentaries and the experts on Adam Smith. And so he also does not say in The Wealth of Nations that everything can be reduced to money. He does not say that at all. In fact, in the theory of moral sentiment, he says there is more to life and the economy than money. And there must be this larger purpose, and those are the big questions we should ask. Ashish, is there a fair summary of both books? So I think we all misunderstood Adam Smith because we never read Adam Smith. We're reading some essay or some 800-word summary of what somebody said Adam Smith said without ever having read Adam Smith. The summary is by a chap who's never read Adam Smith. So we're reading summaries or summaries or summaries or summaries or summaries or something like that. And then it's all become this wonderful thing. So I'm not a trained economist, but when I read these 2 books by Adam Smith, when I was probably 18 or something, so very naive reading of Adam Smith, this was my reading of it. And in the 40 years since, my view hasn't changed. And therefore, I'm appalled when supposedly well-published economists misquote and misunderstand Adam Smith. Very confidently, they write papers and op-eds on Adam Smith without addressing this major issue, which is the heart of what he says, is these 2 things. So in a way, you're chopping off the head and saying it's a headless body, headless body, headless body running around. No. Actually, there is a head. It is not running around. It's quite stationary and it's giving you good stuff. So that's, I think, a big challenge with the free market theorists, is most of them have never read Adam Smith. And it's a big problem. I completely agree with you. The free market theorists can't find the free market. First, that is their problem. When they say, this is a free market concept and it should work, I ask them, show me the free market. If you're so confident that it works and you're a free market theorist, show me one free market. And they struggle to find for me one free market. Which country has a free market? In which product? India clearly they say doesn't have a free market. Okay, United States, does it have a free market? No, 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 there are all these constraints and these are all these government interventions and there are all of these problems with it. That's not a free market. Okay, Europe has a free market. Show me one country with a free market. No, no, Europe doesn't have a free market. Then why should we have a free market? So you're back to the same problem. You're telling me we should have a free market because it's very good. And yet you've not been able to convince anybody that we should have a free market, except your friends, of course. And there is no real free market anywhere in the world. So I find this a real challenge. I agree with you, it's a wonderful idea. But first do it in your hometown with one product well. And then do it in your district. And then do it in the one country in the world where they will listen to you. After that, I will do it. So I really struggle. It's not that I'm against free markets. It's just that nobody's found me a beautiful model that works according to what their own theory of the free market is, let alone Adam Smith's model of free market. So that's my slight problem with free markets. The free marketeers themselves don't believe in free markets. So they write very beautiful stuff. It's really complicated. There's lots of formulae in free market theorists because they have to write limitations and all that, right? So there's lots of complicated formulae. But in plain English, my only question is, show me one example. And the answer, most of them is, doesn't exist. So that's the end of free market. Ashish sir, you have something to add on free market? No, but you agree, right? I mean, this is a big challenge we face. So Ashish and I write very often about markets in healthcare. And our last paper is actually on India's healthcare markets. And we are, in that sense, free marketeers. And yet, we found a model where government intervention is necessary to create a free market. So, in a sense, if you can think of it that way, we are the true bucks of Adam Smith, because that's what he said, that government has to set up a chance for a free market to exist. And government has to intervene in this chaos to create a free market. So that's as close to free marketeers as you will get, is us.
So we have breached the art.
Sorry.
But I would like to ask one question, if that's all right.
Yeah, pucho.
Yeah, so I want to ask about, so in academia we have these journals, publications, where we send our paper and then they charge us money to read that paper.
Correct.
So I want to know your opinion about this publication model of these journals, and like, is that a good thing? Because recently we had a editor from Nature, and
yes,
we had a lot of fight with her.
Of course, of course.
All of our professors. So yeah, what is your general opinion about this?
It goes back to how we incentivize publication, correct? So if you get points based on impact value of a journal, irrespective of whether 2 people read it or 200 people read it. That's your challenge, right? You've decided that the incentive for faculty in any institution is measured by number of papers in high impact journals. That's been the standard in not just in India but elsewhere as well. So you're creating this incentive. It's completely artificial. It's completely artificial because just because the impact value of the journal is whatever that weird figure is, I never know how it's calculated, but there is some number, right? 4 point something something something. It's on a grade of what? 7.
No, in fact, this is actually number of citations per unit year divided by some.
Exactly. So it's some number and it has to be more than 4 point something, right?
Yeah, that is, yeah, you can always have various different parameters to measure. Impact factors generally vary. They can be like 30 to 40 or something like that.
But the fact that your paper is published there is a meaningless accolade because there is zero chance, okay, there's a high chance that nobody will read it. So the fact that it is like his success, the fact that the journal has high impact, then you have this big leap that says if you publish in that, your research will have high impact. There's no rationale for that. So we made this giant leap from saying the journal has impact to your article will have impact and will be cited many times. So that's your first problem. So you've created this incentive structure to publish in those by having this artificial requirement that you're great if you publish in those journals. If we break that, if we just break that and say, listen, this makes no sense. In the old days when impact was judged by these journals and there was actual peer review done, we still found very, very bad papers. The level of retraction since 1990 is more than we had in the 3 decades before. So the fact that you have high impact journals with great peer review has actually not solved the problem of the quality of the papers. So that's your first problem, right? So all the fundamental basis to say this is a good idea, I'm demolishing. So my way of looking at this is, you're saying that if I publish in a high impact journal, it's some accomplishment. I'm saying, is it? I'm saying it is not, because first, your paper may not have any impact just because it's published. Secondly, the quality of that publication is not what it used to be because the number of retractions we're seeing. So the claim is it's a high impact journal because it's peer reviewed. I'm saying it is peer reviewed, but the peer review has failed because the number of retractions has increased. And it's true of all journals. So you look at any of the high impact journals and you check the number of retractions, it's gone up over the last 30 years.
In fact, it goes up with impact factor. The higher the impact factor, the more the
I
retraction.
see. So again, it doesn't justify any incentive to publish. To go back to the original idea, what was the assumption? The assumption fails for these 3 reasons. Now, if it fails for all these 3 reasons, then what should we be incentivizing? We have to incentivize some way, right, of publication, because if you're a research institution, you should publish. The way of looking at it in other places has been how many times your paper has been cited. Irrespective of where it has been published, how many times has it cited? Now, there's a problem with that, because what we've found, especially from papers and researchers from the global south, that white males tend to cite themselves. Now, that's a factor of life. It's a reality of life that the majority of people publishing are old white men, and they're all citing themselves. So again, you can't say, the incentive is to be cited unless you're middle-aged white man. Then it's a fair evaluation of your academic merit. If you're a middle-aged white man, then you can say number of citations is a fair reflection of your competence. But if you're not, then that can't be the basis of evaluation. Then you have to find something else. Now, the something else is what we have not been able to find. And for want of something else, we've fallen into the trap of saying, let us stay with the model that works for middle-aged white men, and then use it everywhere uniformly around the world, and say that has to be the model. And it's in every journal. Nobody is an exception to it. I mean, the Lancet is not an exception to it. So what more can I say? So you're absolutely right. So for want of better, we are stuck with a terrible model. But somebody here should write up a better model. Ashish sir, what is a better model? Sorry? Sky Hub. Yeah, but
archives are something what we extensively use, an open source kind of platform where you deposit your papers and you can route it into any journal.
Yeah, so PubMed's the same thing. Yeah. But I'm saying, how do you evaluate the quality of it? We're back to that problem, right? The problem arose because a rule of thumb for quality of paper is it gets published in Nature, it gets published in Lancet or whatever else you chemists and physicists publish in. Because we didn't want to sit and evaluate the value of it. We didn't want to evaluate your paper. So what did we say? It's like saying you're a good runner if you win a medal at the Olympics. I don't sit and evaluate, is your style good, is the time good, this, that and the other. You bring a medal, you're guaranteed for life. In this case, in the academic world, we said that is the medal. You publish in Nature or whatever else you guys publish in, and that is good for us. Now, we haven't found an alternative. We have to say that's not really a fair justification. In this alternative, where if I publish a blog post, or I do a YouTube video, or I do a podcast, is that not a display of my contribution? Now, how are you going to judge the quality of it? Because we don't know how to judge it, we have done the bureaucratic thing. And that has caused this cottage industry, right? Of journals, predatory journals. So, we've ended up there, unfortunately. But I'm curious to understand if you guys can find an alternative to the publication scandal.
As we say, peer review is deeply flawed.
Correct.
Everything else is deeper. So that is an issue. We're stuck with that because there's, as you said, that there is some kind of a vicious circle in which we have caught up ourselves. There is no foreseeable kind of a solution for that yet.
I look at everything else, and there is a similar way of gaming it. So if you say, blog posts, how you're going to get views on blog posts, then we know how we can scam that, right? It's very easy to scam views on blog posts or YouTube videos or podcasts or whatever. We can take a podcast and make it the top 100 podcast in the country or in India or whatever. And there's just software manipulation, nothing to do with the quality of that. If you say citations, we can do the same thing. We can go to Symbiosis and get 10,000 people to write papers and cite Professor Pawan Kumar on every subject. It doesn't matter, it has to do anything with light. It can do with darkness and we will cite his paper on it. It is possible. And people are publishing. So it can't be views, it can't be citations. So the rules of thumb, the shortcuts that we have for quality of papers is perhaps not that. Then you have to find an alternative and say it doesn't matter. This is a principle which we accept as an honorable thing that you will publish. We will not judge you by number of papers. We will not judge you by where you publish. And we hope that you will be cited adequately over time. Because again, the citation scandal is that how many cites do you get, this year, next year? That's actually meaningless number, because we have papers being cited from 30 years ago even now. On many of our subjects, we're going back a long time to say the idea germinated from this paper. We had conversation at lunchtime about a couple of these things, and we're continuing to do that now. They didn't get any credit for that obscure paper written on mRNA in 1980, whatever it was that she wrote that paper. So again, that's not a fair evaluation of the quality of the work they're doing. So it is the real challenge. Or you just work on an honors system, which is that people are working hard, they're publishing, and no questions asked, which is the American model of a tenure track professor, that somebody has vouched for you, or at least your department has vouched for you, and your peers have vouched for you, and you're tenured, and therefore you don't have to worry about it. I mean, that was the original idea behind many of the Indian institutions where people were on permanent appointment. So it tried to get over all of these scandalous things, but then it's come back as performance evaluation, promotion, it's come back. You try to get over it by saying you will get promoted over time, but that had other problems, right? So lots of undeserving people getting in and you can't get rid of them. So I don't think there's an easy way out, but my view on publication is that just make it free. The publishers themselves make fortunes. Don't share it with anyone. So frankly, we have the same problem as this. The people who are creating it, the people who are producing it, the people who are verifying it, and the people who are consuming it, are all paying. The one person who's doing nothing is making all the money for just putting it online, or they're not even printing it, right? They're outsourcing the printing. So it's the same problem as we have here, that the authors are paying twice, once in the work they're doing and publication fees. The reviewers don't get paid, so they're investing time into this, and they don't even get a free copy. I've done reviews, peer reviews of stuff. I don't have access to the journal, so I just get the PDF of that one paper that is sent to me for peer review. I don't myself. I mean, the least they can give me an annual subscription for that whatever journal they're asking me to review for, right? That's the least they should be doing, but I don't even get that. So I have to pay, and I've had the silly situation where it's a piece in which I am cited and I don't have access to. So this is a weird thing. So the only way to crack this is to say that, we will make it all free. I think there's an interesting move by the government that was announced last year to say if you're an education institution, we will just get everything available for free for all Indian education institutions. I think it's a wonderful idea. I don't know how much it's been implemented and who they've been able to sign up to that. But again, it is to break the monopoly that the government can do it. So what could be done for patents can be done for copyright as well. So there is provision in the law to say that, listen, this is a copyrighted work, but it is for government non-commercial use, and we can do it. It has been done before in India, but guess where? We have nationalized copyright in some works. Can someone remember which one? The first one. There's no copyright on the Constitution. No, nothing. Come on, you're all patriotic Indians. You should know this one. No, not nationalized. The works of Subramanya Bharati was the first one. And then there are a few others, all by the Tamil Nadu government. So it can be done. And for not substantial sums of money. Then it became a scandal. So you take a good thing, right? And then what happens? We decide we like some poet and we want to give them some money. Absolute rubbish poet. Nobody cares two hoots about his work. But we say we're going to nationalize your work and give you 10 lakhs of rupees. That is the downside of it. But the fact that we have nationalized, it can be done, and for not substantial sums in the case of Subramanya Bharati, all of his work, which includes some recordings as well. So copyright in books, poems, music, speeches, whatever, has been nationalized in India before. So it can be done for substantially more important things than poems. Although I love poems.
Note, can I ask everyone to thank us?
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
I hope everyone takes away something from this insightful conversation, and thank you everyone.
There is this 12th star I figured in the sky. Great. So what? Why is it important to me? And surprisingly, if you do that exercise, you will find a huge number of people who are actually interested in this kind of stuff. One of the chaps who's done it really well is Dr. Mukund Thattai at the NCP. I have no understanding of DNA replication, how DNA goes from one organism to its future generation. And the simple thing is, if it's the same DNA, why people look different, right? And there's so many papers telling us all crazy stuff, but nobody really explained it to us. And we are interested in plain language that replication doesn't mean the exact copy. It's like a recipe. That made all that sense. Ah, now I get it. So same recipe, different people. different kinds of dal. Makes sense to me. So, I think there's this communication which of the stuff that you guys put out. If you can get one thing that you can explain to your mother kind of level, I think it'll be fantastic. And that's what we are missing. You're doing great work, but only you and your friend and his girlfriend, if pressurized, will be able to figure it out, right? Otherwise, nobody else is actually getting sense of any of this stuff. So even the stuff that I do, a lot of it is not. I haven't mentioned the provision of law. I don't mention a concept here. It's to try and explain it in a way that people who don't know the law, don't know any of you, don't know economics, will still be able to relate to it and say, that is what is happening there. We didn't give you theories of intervention, market failures, none of that stuff. But if you guys can think of doing that,
I think that's where science outreach and podcasts come in, like to help people.
Very strong arm of IISER, which does exactly similar kind of stuff. And of course, podcast is also a kind of an offshoot of similar kind of thinking. There are questions related to how one can also disseminate knowledge in an effective way.
Most of the important stuff. So I'm just thinking that if you think somebody making a good presentation, it's an interesting enough idea, you just answer 2 or 3 questions separately and say, here's 3 things why this is important and how you can relate to it in daily life. Give examples of things around you. Most of the other stuff is very, very difficult. Scientific stuff, mathematical stuff, somewhere in the sky, really difficult. Even people who are interested. I'm really interested in science. But if this had all been about chemistry, formula, and all of that, completely lost. Or about the complexity of the patent story there, completely lost. So, to everybody in science, I tell them, please.
Sure.
It's very important.
Teach us, but do it gently. In English language, in vernacular languages.
Yes.
It's exceptionally hard to do it in in Hindi or Kannada or anything else. Because science doesn't really communicate well in those languages. But you can take a lot of these concepts and use them in a very colloquial sense.
Right.
This is like teaching economics to people who are not economists with apples, oranges, mangoes, trees, land, sky. So if you can do science, some stuff like that, I think it'll be really fun. I mean, not everybody gets a chance to come here, visit the lab, see what it means, ask questions. This is like your life leaders. How does that work? Why? What are these things? So it's really an interesting thing to put this out there. And lots of kids will love it. Some older kids also will love it. But it could be a wonderful thing, and it's a thing, right? Now you have somebody who helps you with science communication.
They actually have very, very strong components. Science media, science activity
center.
Yeah,
there are a lot of things going on.
So make it interesting.
Right.
And we'll all be your fans.
But for sure, we are already your fans.
Yeah.
No, this is a complex issue, which was very nicely kind of put across. And for sure, we'll have more discussion on this.
We are very happy to hear. I was telling him also, and I told you guys also, I never say no to an invitation to any education institution. I mean, that's be an absolute crisis that I can't be in 2 places at the same time. That's the only reason I say no. But otherwise, as it was with you guys, you said 5:30 Friday evening. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So
good thing.
Yeah,
This
really
will be put on.
Yeah, but happy to come back and do other stuff. So give me a shot anytime.
Yeah.
But it was great fun. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashish sir, for coming. Thank you, Science Media Center, and for Glenn for recording.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
No.
Thank you all.
Thank you, audience. All of you wonderful people who came here.
Yeah, and stayed back on a Friday evening.
Yeah, really.
Okay, good.